We'll be starting in a few minutes. All right. I think we still have like 4 minutes. So we'll be starting out. Hey everyone. Thank you everyone for joining. If you can go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat, that would be great. So in the YouTube chat, you can basically type out where are you joining from. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And also, where did you hear about this live session? That's always good to know. And we'll be starting in a few minutes. We still have like 3, 4 minutes. So you can definitely go ahead and introduce yourself in the live chat. I'm looking at the live chat and I'll be able to answer your questions. If you have any questions, yeah, I can definitely answer your questions. All right. I'm in Houston, Texas, and right now the weather is, well, it's thunderstorms are coming up over here. So hopefully, you know, uh, hopefully we are not going to lose power. Just to let you know, whenever thunderstorm comes in Houston, we lose power. So right now outside I'm looking, it looks fine. But if I suddenly goes offline, that is because I lost power. All right, that's pretty normal in Houston. It happened last week also. All right. All right, so we have a couple of comments. Ocean Singh, I'm joining from India. I'm your biggest fan. Oh, well, thank you so much, Ocean Singh. Hope things are good with you and everything. Then we have Clifton Evans, Canadian in Ireland, YouTube alert. Okay, that's really good. We have a lot of people joining in. There's like maybe 10, 15 people. So go ahead, if you're just joining in, go ahead and introduce yourself in uh, in the YouTube chat. Ocean Singh is saying, I also want to come to United States to work as an iOS developer. That's great. Hopefully you'll land a job over here. Uh, I think they're like the main hub in US for iOS developers. I would assume it will be San Francisco. All of these metro areas: New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Austin. Also, that's also Ravikant Tumala from LinkedIn. So thank you for joining, Ravikant. Once again, if you're just joining, go ahead and introduce yourself uh, in the YouTube chat. Now there is the possibility that this is like I want to do like multiple sessions of SwiftUI architecture. So what I'm planning to do is uh, this one we're going to cover some parts of it. Next one I'm going to show you some code, and the next one we're going to do something else. It's a big topic as you can imagine. All right, it's a big topic to cover. So I don't want to do like a 3 hour session or something like that. I just want to give you some idea so that you can think about it and you can come back in the next session that we host. You can come back and then you can ask questions, or it will give you some time to think about things. All right. We have Nirav Virpara from India. YouTube alert. Learn with Bibik from Nepal. Really good. Awesome. All right. Who else is joining? Go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat. I know that a lot of people are joining for this session, so that is really good. Craig Dubois is saying, really appreciate your video, so helpful in the learning process. Thank you so much, Craig. Really appreciate it. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And once again, this might be like a multi, series. right? Because architecture is a big topic. So we'll cover some parts today, and then we'll cover the rest, uh, in the future one. Guerrillas in Africa, Cameroon, very nice. Okay, all right, everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can make this full screen. Oh no, if I make it full screen, then I cannot see anything. So that's okay. I'll try to, hopefully you'll be able to see everything. All right. I'll try to make this bigger. Cannot really make it full screen for some reason. Okay. Okay. All right, everyone. So hopefully you can see all the stuff. Let me see over here if I do like that. Is it gonna, can I go to the next one? That'll make it full screen, but I don't think it will allow me to go to the next one, right? Navigator. I have to have a navigator. All right. Then you have Cyril from upstate New York. All right, everyone. I think it's time to start. And if you have any questions, you can just post it on the YouTube chat. All right. And once again, I'm just going to go over the concept, the things that I have learned. And you'll see some code examples also, obviously. But I think in the next lectures, in the next live streams, I can actually write some code live and then answer more questions. All right. But this is going to hopefully give you some things to think about or explore. And that's all I want to do. All right. So hopefully you can see the slides because if I go full screen, then I won't be able to see your chat. So I'm just going to use the slides like that. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's a little bit about me. My name is Mohammad Azam. I am an iOS developer, and I also teach as my coding bootcamp instructor job. My full-time job is as a coding bootcamp instructor, where I teach web development and machine learning with Python. All right, so it's very different things that I do. So I'm very fluent in web development like React and Redux, and backend development Node Express.js. Apart from that, I also do a website of my own, which is Azam Sharp School. I go to speak at different conferences. Just came back actually from Finland from Arctic conference. And here's my website, which if you haven't seen it, it's at azamsharp.school. And one of the things, apart from the courses, I think there are like 24 courses or something. Apart from the courses, I also do workshops. These are group workshops on unit testing, server-side development, and all that stuff. But just yesterday, I added one-on-one coaching. So you can see the link of one-on-one coaching, which is right there. So I just added it literally yesterday. So if you are looking for one-on-one coaching on, anything related to SwiftUI or, having your own kind of like your migration, your journey to becoming a developer, career related stuff, anything like that, you can check it out. All right. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. If you have any question, you can just write in the chat, by the way. All right. And I'll stop and I'll answer those questions. All right. So buckle up. All right. And I always say when I'm presenting SwiftUI architecture or any architecture topic is buckle up because architecture is just such a hot topic and there's no single answer to these things. So I'm going to take you to my journey, the things that I have learned, and maybe you'll agree with it, maybe you don't agree with it, but hopefully you will try out things. And that's the whole point of this live stream, that you try out things, experiment, and maybe it will be right solution for your project or maybe not. That is only you can decide. All right. And just to let you know, I did this presentation, which I'm showing you. I did that in the Netherlands. All right. So if you have already seen it, it's going to be the same kind of like the material, but you can ask questions. I mean, you're live, so you can use YouTube chat to ask questions. So at WWDC 2019, this is when Apple announced SwiftUI, right? And I was actually very happy because I was already working with React and I was already working with Flutter. So SwiftUI felt like it's pretty similar to Flutter, pretty similar to React. And I was like, okay, this is a declarative framework, and I've been working with React, I've been working with Flutter, and SwiftUI seems very similar. And and due to my experience with working with, especially with React, I was able to, uh, you know, use SwiftUI easily. So I didn't really had any, you know, learning curve or whatever, learning whatever restrictions. I was able to do it really quickly. But obviously, one of the questions that always comes to our mind at that point when you're learning new things is, well, which pattern should I use? Because when we were doing um, UI kit development, then we were using MVC. That was kind of like a default thing, right? I mean, you would just, anytime you create any project in UI kit, it was always MVC, Model View Controller, even if it's like a Hello World project. So in 2019, I didn't really think that much about the architectural part of it or different patterns. What I did is like, well, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. So what is everybody else doing? You know the answer, what everybody else was doing. And everybody else was doing MVVM, all right? So model, view, view model. And I looked at model, view, view model, and I was actually comfortable with it because, you know, MVVM basically, I've already worked with it in WPF, which is Windows Presentation Foundation. So I've already worked with those things. And that's why I was like, okay, this feels nice. It feels, you know, that I can work on it. Uh, and then I started like writing articles. So I wrote a book on MVVM. I started like these different articles that I've written. All right, I presented. I've on the podcast. You know, so all of these different things I was writing about MVVM, that hey, this is the pattern to use, and this is back in like 2019, 2020, even I think 2021. I was very heavily invested in MVVM. You can see the dates on the article, right? It's 2019, 2020, 2020 again, and so on. Um, most of the apps, so hopefully you were able to see that, but most of the apps that I was designing, um, they were client-server application, either client-server or they were core data, Swift data application. I think client-server applications, these are more common because every time you want to create something, you have some sort of a server, whether you implemented the server yourself or you're just using some third-party server, whatever. So it's always kind of like, mostly it's client-server applications, right? And what I was doing is that if we look at an example of some sort of a movie application that also publishes reviews, all right? So let's say that these are different screens of the application. Now I differentiate between a screen and a view. Screen is also a SwiftUI view, but it is a larger container that is not meant for reusability. Kind of like a web page, right? Like one page will display you something. So over here I have 5 screens. Um, they're not meant for reusability, but inside these screens I may have some views that are meant to be reusable. I may have a view called movie list view, movie cell view, these kind of things. So maybe a rating view. I'm just making this up, all right? Everyone following everything okay right now? You can write in the chat comments. And sometime you'll see that I'll go full screen because I may have some animations that I want to show you. So hopefully you'll able to see those animations and all that. But right now it's not full screen because I want to read your comments also. All right. So hopefully everyone is following up till now. All right. And hopefully this is the way that you have also started developing your application, or maybe you're still doing that. All right. Okay. So we have several screens. Okay. And what happens is that for every single screen, let me actually do it like this way. There we go. for every single screen, and this might be common, like movie list screen, I have a movie list view model. Add movie screen, add movie view model. Movie detail screen, movie detail view model. Whatever screen, whatever view model. I think hopefully you're following that, right? All of these view model will have some sort of a dependency on HTTP client, like some sort of a networking layer. They need the networking layer because all of these view models are actually communicating with the server, right? This is a common pattern. I mean, now I know that some of you might look at that and they might say, well, I don't really create every view model for every screen. Okay, that's fine. But if you are following the traditional, the classical approach of MVVM, model view view model, then you will learn that for every single screen, it is backed by a separate view model. Hence the word view model, view model, the model for the view, right? Um, and yes, there are situations when you have a view model that can be shared among other things like authentication status, like login, logout status. Those view models can be shared with many different screens. But for the screen or the page, you usually have one view model backed up for every single screen. And this is kind of like a very common pattern. If you go online, you'll be able to see that this is most common technique that people use. All right. So this also means if we put all of this into a grid or a tabular, view, it is a one-on-one relationship, right? I mean, movie list view model, movie screen, movie list view model, add movie screen, view model, movie detail screen, separate view model, separate view model, separate view model. And this is the way that I at least started developing things. In other words, if I have 20 screens, I will have 20 view models. All right, everyone following? Okay. Now these view models will also have a dependency. Well, the screen will have a dependency on the view model, and the view model will have dependency on the networking layer. So sometimes you will see some code like this. This is not like the only way to write the code, obviously, but sometimes you will see some code like this, right? Where you have a screen and the screen has a dependency on the view model and the view model has a dependency on networking layer. Now, networking layer, if you want, you can make it like a shared instance or something like that, and that's fine too. But you will see these kind of dependencies. All right. Anyone has any questions? If you have questions, you can type in the YouTube live stream chat. Hopefully everyone is following along. Okay, I'll wait a little bit. If you have any questions, you can always put the questions in the YouTube chat. All right. Okay, so I'll continue. And sometimes you can see, I mean, these kind of dependency uh, look like this also. All right. So you can see the view model, every single screen is backed up by a view model. All right. And over here, you can also see one of the examples where you are actually passing a detail view model to the detail screen, and then it's initialized with a detail. I mean, it just looks funny to me, right? I mean, when we write this kind of code, it looks kind of weird. It looks kind of funny. All right. The other thing that I've started to notice, and by the way, just to let you know that I started to notice these things after even working and following this MVVM pattern for at least like 2 years or maybe even more, like 3 years. All right. So it's not like I wrote one app and I'm like, okay, this looks kind of weird. No, I wrote like hundreds of apps, prototypes, and all the apps, and then I started to notice these things like, hey, this looks very difficult to maintain the state. And oops, not sure what that is. Oh, you're not supposed to see that one. Okay, that's fine. And the other thing that I saw over here was if I'm creating a view model, there's a lot of things that I cannot access inside the view model, which you may have also seen, right? Things like app storage, things like environment object, or now it's known as environment, I guess, focus state, fetch request for core data, environment object, query from Swift data. And I started to notice that I cannot really access any of these things inside the view model because these things are only available, um, inside the view. So what am I supposed to do now? I mean, I need to use this pattern to get the data from core data or Swift data or anything like that, but none of these things are available inside uh, inside the view model, inside the observable object. All right. The other problem that I faced was sometimes I have a view hierarchy that will be kind of like this, you know. At the top we have a screen, then we have two views, and then one of the views has one child and that has another child and so on. And sometimes the view that is at the bottom might say that, hey, I need the data from the top view. So how do I pass the data? I mean, yeah, one option would be to, you know, pass it from here to here, here to here, and then here to here. But if the data is used, or if I want to use it very deep in the hierarchy, and it's also used maybe somewhere else, then another option that I we can look into is environment object. But again, we run into that issue is the environment object is only available inside the view, which is a SwiftUI view. So I cannot really use environment object or access anything in the environment object inside my view model, all right, or inside the observable object. Because view model, when you create view model, those are classes which are conforming to observable object protocol or observable macro in iOS 18, right? And then I go and find these kind of questions on Stack Overflow. You can see that this was asked like 3 years ago. It has a lot of upvotes, 116 upvotes. I'm sure it has now way more upvotes. Other people were having the same problem that, hey, how do I pass environment object into a view model, right? And you can, by the way. I mean, if you're thinking that, oh, it cannot be done, well, it can be done. But then you will get into a code which looks insanely ugly, kind of like this, right? You have to pass the global state as the initial at the init in the view model, and then it just becomes very hard. Trust me, I've tried that, and even in a very simple application, you kind of lose track of who is maintaining the state, who is the owner, and it everything gets out of sync. All right, and that's the main thing about SwiftUI is the data and the view, which the things that you display on the screen, they have to be in sync, right? They have to be whenever you do something in the view that can update the data, but the data has to represent the view also, or the state has to represent the view. All right. I found some similar issues with core data and Swift data also. I mean, even in a small application that consists of two screens, where one of them is a view and one of them is a modal, like a sheet, as you can see over here, I have a movie list screen, that's an actual screen, and you click a button, somewhere in the nav bar, and you open a sheet, like a modal, which is add movie screen. And you type something in the add movie screen, like maybe there's some text boxes, text fields over there, and you want to, when you submit, when you save the movie, you want to refresh the movie list screen, right? Because the modal is or the sheet is going to go away, but you want to refresh the movie list screen. So how would you do that? Well, there are a number of ways. You can do it on the dismiss. I mean, when the sheet is dismissed, you just call the populate movies and you get the movies again. So that's one of the ways that you can do that. All right. You can actually implement NS fetch results controller if you're using core data, so you can do that, but you can already see the amount of code that I had to type to get it to work. You can make it generic also, like the NS fetch results control, but still, it's like a lot of stuff that you're doing, which you shouldn't be, all right? I, this technique, I've actually used it before. Unfortunately, I've used it, but sometimes you just pass in different flags, you know. Over here, you can see that on the add task view, this one, I'm passing a flag, and when that flag is going to change, then I can put a on change in my task list so that it can fetch it again. So all of these techniques I have used, and none of these techniques I found good. I mean, these were all really bad techniques that I've used. All right, before. Well, but then I start thinking about what about fetch request? I mean, fetch request is available in fetch request is available in core data, and query is available in Swift data. So I started working on that, but the online at that time, I'm talking about like maybe a couple of years back, probably like 2022, when I started working on these things, researching on this, there was a lot of pushback from the iOS community, like a lot of pushback. On Twitter, you can see, I mean, it's just crazy amount of pushback that, hey, you can't use that. This is only available inside the view, and that will be putting the logic in the view and so on. All right. So all of this, a lot of pushback happened, but I was like, okay, I'm just experimenting. Let's see if I can do that. I mean, let's see how these things will look like if I use a if I use a fetch request and query for Swift data inside my views. So I was confused at that time. I was like, well, you know, what should I do? I mean, if I go with the route of view models, then it's just getting very complicated. I cannot access fetch requests. I cannot do queries. I cannot do this, cannot do that. But I remember that the React is very similar to SwiftUI. So I looked at React and I already knew React, and the React uses a pattern called container presenter pattern, which is a pretty simple pattern. Basically, the container will fetch the stuff and just give it to the presenting view. All right. And this is implemented in React. You can see over here that you have the dog images container. I know that most of you are iOS developers, so it might be a little bit hard to understand, but you can think of this as a parent view, and this is a child view. So the parent is fetching the information right there and just passing it down to the child. That's what it's doing, okay? So, um, so I said, okay, let's see if I can implement that. All right. So this is currently my architecture. All right. So right now I'm on full screen. You can see every screen has a separate view model. And I started thinking, what happens if I remove these view models? And keep in mind, I'm just experimenting right now. And the view itself can just, directly talk to the HTTP networking layer. All right. So I tried it out. Oh, thank you so much, Rachel, for becoming a member of the fan club. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. Yes, my YouTube also has a join feature, so you can become a fan or things like that. You'll get some extra videos. So thank you so much. All right. So, and here is the code, which is inspired from React. All right. So take a look at this code. All right. Now, I'm not saying that, okay, you go and update your application and always use this code. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is another way for specific kind of apps. So let's take a look at this code. The first thing you will notice is that, okay, we have a screen, which is kind of like the whole container, right? we have the environment. So I'm getting the HTTP client, which is basically the networking layer, from the environment. So whenever I have any services, I just put it in the environment value. And these services are not observable objects. These are simple structures, value types. So they don't really maintain any state. They just fetch the stuff and then give it to you, as you'll see in a moment. I have a local state called articles, which is an array of articles because I'm fetching articles. Then when the body or the list loads, I call load articles right there inside the task modifier. Load articles is simply a kind of like a helper function, all right? And it calls the load function of the networking layer, get the articles, and the articles are automatically displayed on the screen because they are state. So this is one of the ways that you can construct your applications using SwiftUI, which is inspired from React, inspired from React container presenter model. Um, in this particular way of building apps, I usually suggest you use this if there is not much uh, logical aspects in your application. All right, logical aspects over here means that maybe your application is just a front end for a JSON result. You can do CRUD operation, create, read, update, and delete. And some apps are like that. I mean, there's not much logic going on, right? I mean, you're just fetching data. Maybe you're like filtering or sorting and these kind of things you're doing, but they're not like very, heavy business logic going on. So this is one of the ways, all right, inspired from React container presenter pattern, all right. So this was actually good. I mean, I worked using this on a couple of different apps. Sorting. I mean, this is just like sorting can be moved somewhere else. That's fine. Um, yeah, this is just like sending the data back and forth. Like, because when you fetch the data in one screen, how would you send it to the other screen? How would you update? And I think that was the main challenge with this approach is that if you see over here, this one, the state over here is local, right? Local to the view. So if I want to add another article from a different screen, or I need to have access to the articles in completely different screen, it will be very hard to do that because I have to pass it around, right? And that was one of the issues with this approach. So this technique kind of worked for scenarios where, articles are just one screen and customers are one screen and you can pass it around and all that, that's fine. But when it becomes a little bit more complicated, like when I have to have access to the articles in multiple states, multiple views, then obviously it didn't really work out. All right. Anyone has any? I'm just looking if anyone has any questions. I thought I saw something, but I don't see anything right now. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions, you can always type in the YouTube chat. Hopefully everyone is enjoying this. All right. And I'll be doing more of these because this is uh, not like the only one, because we're not going to cover all the things. And then maybe in the future live streams, I will code and we'll all check it out. Tang, thank you. Nice to meet you too. Vietnam. Vietnam is one of the countries I definitely want to visit. Heard good things about Vietnam, so definitely in the future. So this technique was okay for kind of like a simple apps that are, they don't really have any domain logic going on, and also apps that are not really needing any global state. Because if I want to share the data, then I got into problems, right? Because I have to send the data somehow to the other views. So this container presenter, part inspired from React was really nice, but it was a little bit messy if you want to share the data from between different screens. All right. So I turn to observable object, which is also known as, now I think you can do environment, in not observable object, environment object, all right? And environment object, you can create that on a class using the observable object protocol, or you can use the observable macro, all right? So it will kind of look like this. And this, I think, is an important diagram over here, all right? You have different screens over here, movie list, add movie, and detail movie, and they're all talking to the same layer, all right? I call it like a store or aggregate model, aggregate store. You can call it anything you want. And then that store is communicating with the HTTP networking layer, and that networking layer is communicating with the server. Okay. Now, this is something that I learned from Apple source code, all right, Apple sample code. And I think whenever I mention Apple sample code, the first question always comes like, oh, well, we shouldn't be trusting Apple sample code. That's only for the sample. You should just don't even read that. That's garbage. All right. You can never create applications with that. And my suggestion is it's code. All right. It's code. Try it out. See if it works for your scenario or not. All right. But I think most people, when they look at and they're like, oh, Apple sample code, we should definitely not do that. We should do the inverse of that. And I don't agree with that. I don't care if it's sample code or some kid wrote on a piece of napkin, it's still code and I can learn from it. All right. And I think that's the mentality we need in the iOS community, because people are very quick to dismiss these things. All right. So I looked at sample code, and this is one of the sessions in WWDC, which is Data Essentials in SwiftUI. If you haven't seen this, I definitely encourage you to watch that. And if you look at this one, the the purple layer, that is one layer where all the views are going and getting the data. And the data models are just, product struct, customer struct, these kind of things. Now, you can obviously have more of these, but I'll show you in an example. So I call it aggregate root model or aggregate store, all right? And you can actually look at this from the Apple Samples app. So if you look at the Fruta application or a food truck application, and I think food truck application is actually quite big application. I mean, it's not small, it's not large, but I think it's in the medium size. This is what they do over there, all right? Now, the naming is not that important, all right? I mean, the Apple is calling that food truck model. I call it food truck store. Okay, same thing. Some people might call it food truck view model. Now, when you call it food truck view model, as a person like me who has worked with MVVM and view models all my life in WPF, I'm thinking food truck view model represents a view model for a particular screen. Hence the name view model, right? So I don't like to call it view model for those purposes, because if I read food truck view model, then I'm like, oh, it's only for that screen, which is for food truck. So it's only for one screen. I have to check out from other view models. So that's why I like to call it store, but you can call it something else if you want to. And one of the things that I like about this is how this food truck model, food truck store, I mean, you can call it anything you want. I'll just type over here, food truck store, food truck store. I mean, that can be something. It depends what you want to call it. There we go, food truck store. All right. So it's maintaining the entire state of the application. It's an observable object, and you can see that it has a load donuts function right there, which uses the client and pass a donut. Now, at this point, I would not do it this way, right? Because now you have a concrete implementation of your HTTP client inside your load donuts, I would have a dependency. I would pass in as a dependency. Like HTTP client will be passed as a dependency to the food truck store. But looking at this, it looks kind of interesting because we have single observable object which is maintaining the entire state of the application. And that is quite interesting. Now, I'm not saying that every application needs a single observable object. You can have multiple observable objects which are maintaining different parts of the app. But I think if you're working on a small or even a medium-sized app, start with a single observable object, uh, which is the domain, which is controlling the domain. I mean, you may have some other observable objects which are like loading images or whatever they're doing, but start with that. All right, so that was quite interesting to note that this is how Apple is designing their things. And this is my implementation of what Apple was doing with the food truck store. Look at my implementation over here. Now, one thing to realize over here that I created a product store. Now, the product store is responsible for everything related to the product because I was working on a large app. I cannot really put everything in one single observable object, although I can, but just to give you an idea, I mean, you can create multiple observable objects over here. And it has a dependency on HTTP client so that if I want to create a protocol, I can pass in a fake client, to mock it or something. And this is how you will actually use it. So the way that I use it is I create an instance of the product store and I just inject it in the environment. And when you inject it in the environment, it is now accessible to the complete, all the views. And here is how I can use it. In the product list screen, I would get it from the environment, which is step number 1, and then simply call that. And then eventually, I think over here, we're using it. All right, so and the good thing is that if some other screen needs access to the products or want to append or add a new product, they can simply go ahead and use the environment object, access the product store, and update the product store. When they update the product store, the product list screen will automatically get updated because it depends on the product store. And I think that was a really nice way to build apps because I was not really running into that sync issues. Oh, I have the data and the view is not getting refreshed. So that was a really nice way to do those things. And here's the add product screen. You can see in the add product screen, I can also access the product store and then add products. Now, when I showed this to the iOS community, their first question was that, well, isn't product store just a view model? You just named it differently. Okay, the answer is no. All right, and let me show you. Remember this diagram where we had movie list screen, movie list view model, add movie screen, add movie view model, movie detail screen, movie detail view model. How many screens do we have? 3. How many view model do we have? 3. What if I had 50 screens? How many view models will I have? 50, right? But the approach that Apple is suggesting, which is kind of like a built-in framework, is it shouldn't be dependent on the screen. It should be dependent on the data that the screen needs. And you can see over here that, and let me actually exit the full screen. Okay, and you can see over here that even though I have 5 different screens, I didn't created 5 different view models. I created a single movie store, and the movie store is responsible for giving movies and performing functions on movies to all of these screens. Okay, so I'm going to pause over here and just see if you have any questions, because this is one of those places where I get a lot of questions, and I'm just going to pause over here So go ahead and type your question because I'm sure somebody has some questions regarding this. All right. And it's not only like changing the name, like movie view model to movie store. It's the whole idea of that screens, the number of screens should not dictate how many observable objects we should have. Why? Because even though I have 5 screens, what data do they need? They need what? Movies, right? So the source of truth and the data that they need hasn't changed. It's still the same. The source of truth in this case is the server, which is just providing you the data. And the data, all of them needs all of them needs movies. So why create 10 different view models, 10 different observable objects, each for each screen to do that? All right. And the same can be done for the product store. I mean, if you have products, um, you have product screen, add product screen, search products, you can create a product store. Now, if your app is not large enough, right, you can actually just create one store and that's it. And that can manage the products and the movies. You can do that. You can definitely do that. That can be a really good starting point of your app. And you will notice that if you have one store, you have like a lot of lines of code in that store. Hey, that's fine. That's still fine. Just because you have number of lines doesn't make it wrong. It's just a very deep kind of like a deep API instead of being a shallow API. All right. So that's perfectly fine too. Let's see over here. So what we have done over here is we have removed these view models from the picture and we have replaced that with a store, like a movie store. Now the other question is, well, what happens to the view? What is in the view then? Where would I put the logic in the view? Now, the logic in the view, first of all, is not the business logic. And I think that's iOS developer always have this confusion that, oh, I need to do this logic. So everything has to be in the view model. Everything has to be somewhere else. So I can write tests for it. So I can do this, I can do that. But keep in mind that the logic in the view is presentation logic. This can be transformation logic, filtration logic, mapping logic. See in this example, and this is from the food truck application, you can see different logical aspects right inside the view itself. All right. We have orders and we have ordered sections. All right. So all of those things are right inside the actual view. Now the other question comes that, well, they're right inside the view. Does that mean that the view is the view model? All right. The view in SwiftUI is already a view model. And I think that's the most important lesson that you will learn. And when I talked about this, a couple of years ago, I think 2022, wow, I got a lot of hate online. It was amazing. But now it's so refreshing to see that a lot of people are moving in a different directions. All right, a lot of people are just simplifying their code and moving into more like a built-in pattern that Apple has already provided, and they're finding out that SwiftUI doesn't need an additional architecture to wrap itself. SwiftUI is already an architecture, and you should use it in that particular way. And I think that is very interesting, to see. And it wasn't like that in 2022. I can tell you that for sure. All right, not many people were talking about that. And it's just so refreshing to see that people are experimenting now. They're learning about these new patterns, or not new pattern, but they're learning about how to use it. All right. So the question is, if we go with one observable class, what if the code increases? That is, multiple method if required. If you go with one observable object, it really depends on your app, right? If your app uh, can just benefit from one observable class, and it can, even if it has like 500 lines of code, that's fine. It's not a big deal. But I'm not saying that you should always have one observable class. I'm saying if it makes sense. All right. So usually, I think for small or even medium-sized projects, you can get away with one observable class, and that will be fine. But if you don't want that, then let me actually show you where's that one. Yeah, you can have multiple observable classes. See that? Movie store. So if you have a very large project, then you can divide it based on the data that the view is asking for. All right, so these 5 views are interested in movies, so I can say movie store. That's one observable class. Then there are like maybe 10 other views asking for products. Well, okay, then I can say product store. All right, so that's how you can divide. The dividing is the very challenging part because you have to know how to divide these things. And usually, when you divide these things based on the uh, bounded context. Bounded context. So that's the domain-driven design term. So in order to divide these things, you have to understand the business, and that is the hard part, right? So let's look at the comparison. Let's take a look at the comparison over here. Um, you can see that we have simplified things, right? You can see that now with the built-in architecture of SwiftUI, we don't have the direct mapping from screen to view models or screen to observable objects. We are introducing observable objects, we're using observable objects, but we're thinking about them, that when do we have to use them? We're not just adding observable objects because we just added a new screen. Because just think about it. Hold on, just think about it. If you're building a very large application that has 50 or 100 different screens, I'm not talking about views, I'm talking about screens, pages, screens. Views can be like 500 views. Forget about the views because that's just way too many. Screens. If you're building a large e-commerce application that has 100 screens, do you really think you will have 100 view models? All right. That's only you can answer. All right. All right. So what about bigger apps? Well, as I mentioned earlier on, you're not tied up to just use one observable object. You can introduce other observable objects as well, as we have already done. See that? We have movie stored observable object. We have product stored observable object. If this was not a big app, I would just create one observable object and I would just say my whatever. I mean, whatever the name of the thing is. Food truck store. That's it. Done. One. All right. Now keep this in mind whenever you create these observable objects, and probably I'll show you in when we're actually coding next time. Since they manage the entire state, right? Whether it is one observable object or more observable object, I'm going through this one, right? This is from the food truck application. In the food truck application, Apple only created one observable object, all right? And now the way to use these observable object is when you have a child view, you only pass the things to the child view that it needs. You don't pass in the complete observable object to every single child. And that is very important because SwiftUI, whenever you pass something to the view using an initializer, then SwiftUI creates the dependency. So if you want to display orders, and maybe you have a orders view, you know, orders view. What does the orders view need from the global state? Go ahead and type it out. I'll wait. You know the answer to that. Maybe I have an orders view, and orders view, is a reusable view that is capable of displaying orders. Looking at the food truck model or the food truck store, what things does the orders view need to display the orders? Go ahead and type it out on the YouTube chat. I know you know the answer. All right. So you need orders, and that is the only thing you should be passing. And that is going to make your SwiftUI application much faster and high performant, because the orders will only be responsible for orders. Orders view will only be responsible for orders. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about the bigger apps. And in bigger apps, you can separate it out. But this separation, it takes a lot of time. Not time to separate them out, but time to, you know, think about like how do we separate it into multiple observable objects. Um, you know, maybe you have a catalog store. Maybe you have a fulfillment store, inventory store. You know, depends. It depends on your app, how big your app is. What is inventory store doing? Is it like a really complicated stuff? And this is maybe your architecture will eventually look like, all right? And if you look at the Apple documentation, or if you look at most of the Apple new frameworks that they're coming out with, Finance Kit is one of the example. I think Store Kit is another one, but there are many more. They are using a similar architecture. Um, the view over here is simply, it can be a folder which contain all the views for the catalog. The catalog itself is a catalog store, inventory store, ordering store, shipping store. They all have access to the HTTP client. Order, quantity, price, and items. Well, orders. Orders will hopefully have the quantity, price, and items, right? So instead of passing it three things, how about we pass in orders? So that's for the orders view. And so this is kind of like what it actually looks like if you're building on a much larger scale. All right. So again, we have reduced these things to we have reduced the view models to this, and you know, it simplifies our stuff. Now, another question that people usually ask is, if I go back to, where is the view? I think we have a view. If I go back to the orders view, right? How do we test these things, right? How do we test these things? I think that's a valid question. How do we test the code that we are going to write in our orders view? Now, I personally look at the code and I write a much larger test, like a UI test or an end-to-end test. But these things like orders, order sections, these things are tested, I call them passively. So it's not like I'm going to write a separate test to test the orders. And so the orders are filtering, because I think this is being filtered, right? The orders are being filtered, right? And I'm not going to write a separate test to see if the orders are being filtered. I'm not going to write a separate test to write order sections are getting, you know, appended or whatever the code is doing. I'm going to write a much higher level test, and then these things will be just tested passively. Like in the test, I will test that if they are getting filtered. If you have a complicated presentation logic, then you can always extract these things out into a struct and move them into a struct and then write the test for the struct. All right. So sometimes that will help you. But most of the time, what I have seen is that if I have a decision to make that Um, hey, I am going to test whether should I test the domain logic, the logic in my observable objects over here, this. Should I test this or should I test the presentation logic in my view? I would 100% time go to test my domain logic. All right. All right, so let's see. I think we are not done, but we are at the end of this session. It has been like a 1 hour actually, so right? Yeah, exactly 1 hour. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. I have written articles on this topic. I've written a lot of articles on this topic. So let me actually go ahead and show you the article or share the article with you. And what I want you to do is simply just try it out. Just try it out and see if it works without any bias. Because I know, you know what happens, and what happened to me also is I spend so much time sometimes learning new things, learning different patterns. And what happens is that I get so attached to it that it just becomes hard to let go. And I'm sure that a lot of you are feeling that. A lot of you are like, I have spent 3 years learning MVVM and trying to create these apps or learning this pattern. And now this person is saying that maybe there's a better way. But no, there is no better way. This is the way. I've been doing it for 3 years, right? So that is called the sunk cost fallacy. And I want you to wake up and try out different things. All right? Because I did. Remember, I wrote a book on it. I wrote a book on MVVM. I wrote the most popular articles on MVVM. I was on different podcasts and different speaking engagements. But when I saw that it is, you know, not giving me the best results, I moved away. All right, so here's the article. You can definitely check it out right there. And if you go to azamsharp.com, you can find a lot of different, articles related to that. Another thing that you might be interested in, if you're interested in the video course, so I do have a video course that goes over this. Where is it? SwiftUI Architecture, new link. So here is a video course. SwiftUI Architecture video course that you can also check it out. This is more of a video course. I mean, it goes through a lot of stuff, you know. There we go. So you can see it goes through a lot of stuff. All right. Any other questions that I can answer? Hopefully you have enjoyed it. I mean, it was like a 1 hour long, but hopefully you have enjoyed it. You can check out my courses. You can become a YouTube fan, YouTube member if you want. Just like Rachel, welcome to the fan club. Thank you so much, Rachel. And any questions I can answer. So hopefully you will try these things out because you will never know. And if you don't try it out, you will never know. That's the thing about development. I mean, try out. Whenever you write an app, I would say write it like with 3 different ways so that you can compare like which one is the one that's working for you. All right, any questions that I can answer? Any questions? Yeah, if you do have any question, you can type it in the chat. But next time we'll go move a little bit more further. Maybe I'll talk about like Swift data architecture, and then maybe after that we'll go into some coding parts of it. But hopefully you have really enjoyed it. All right, and if you do have any question, you can write in the chat. I've already placed some articles, videos in the chat, so hopefully that will help you out a lot. Those are detailed articles on this topic. All right. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Well, if you don't have any questions, then we'll probably... Are these environment objects like a singleton? I don't like to consider environment object as a singleton because environment objects availability depends on where it is injected. All right. So if the environment object is injected uh, at the root of your app, then it will be available to everyone. But if the environment object is injected not in the root, but maybe somewhere, in a different child or a grandchild, then it will be available to the grandchild and all the great grandchildren and the great 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 grandchildren. All right. So it really depends. So environment object is not singleton. It is dependent on where you're injecting it. All right. Akshay Kardak is saying Flutter Dev scope versus iOS Dev. I think it really depends on where you are. I don't know how to answer that question. Flutter Dev scope versus iOS Dev. It really depends on where you are working. So if your architecture video course is available in Udemy, it is available on Udemy, but the one on Teachable on my own website, that's the one that I usually update. So you can definitely get this from Udemy too, but keep in mind that I don't update that course as much, and the responses to the questions are delayed on Udemy. Oops. All right, any other questions? All right, no other questions, so that's fine. Definitely check out azamsharp. Oh, there are moves over here. Are there risk of race condition where multiple views on the screen at the same time updating this store? Um, are there risk of race condition, multiple views at the same time updating the store? I have not run into any of these situations that if they are updating store, multiple or where multiple views on the screen are updating. No, I have never run into that situation. And keep in mind that if you are displaying, it's always a good idea to break your views into smaller views and only pass the data that the view needs. All right. Now, screens, which are at much higher level, they can have access to the product store and the customer store and all that. But maybe inside the customer screen, you have customer list view. So what is the customer list view needs? Customers. So only pass the customers over there. Don't pass the whole environment object to a customer list view or the smaller views. Only pass the things that it needs. And that will make your SwiftUI much faster because now there's a dependency for the customer list view on the customers so that it only changes, renders, reevaluate when the customer changes. All right. So that's a very important part of increasing performance when it comes to SwiftUI. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think this was great. A lot of people showed up. Definitely check out my website, azamsharp.school. I also do workshops. If you haven't seen that, the workshop is coming up. A 3-hour workshop. It is on testing, and then the other workshop I'm doing is on server-side Swift, but that is in August. All right. Apart from that, you have courses over here. You can definitely check out the courses right there. Lots of courses, machine learning, testing, skip, all that. And I just introduced the one-on-one coaching also. So I just launched this yesterday. So if you're looking for one-on-one coaching, you can also book my time. I only have few slots available because it just gets so busy. So you can definitely check it out. All right. Well, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, you have enjoyed it. And until next time, I will see you later. And you can follow me on Twitter. Twitter, my handle is Azam Sharp. I do post over there a lot for my courses and all the stuff and tricks, code samples, and a lot of stuff. So if you want to follow me, you can. And if you want to do me a favor, uh, promote this on social media so other people can join too. Maybe you can go to LinkedIn and say I attended SwiftUI Architecture live stream and it was good, or share your experience. I mean, that will always help. All right. So more people joining in, that always helps. All right. So again, thank you so much, everyone for coming over here. This was really good. Lots of people came. So thank you so much. All right, and I'll see you next time.